My name is Noah, and I used to believe that truth always came out in the end, that if you held on long enough, if you fought hard enough, then justice would somehow prevail. But now I'm not so sure. I grew up in a quiet town where everyone knew each other and secrets had a way of echoing through the streets disguised as whispers and sideways glances. My mother ran a small antique shop that smelled of lemon oil and old books, and my father was a high school English teacher who quoted Shakespeare at breakfast. They were simple people, proud of their modest home, proud of their two sons. I was the older one, always expected to set the example, and my little brother Caleb followed in my shadow, curious, sensitive, a bit too trusting. We were close despite the age gap, or maybe because of it I felt protective of him, especially after our mom passed away when I was 17 and he was just 11. Dad did his best, but something in him cracked after she died. He became quieter, colder, more focused on appearances than feelings, and that's when she arrived. Her name was Chelsea. She was our new neighbor, at first just a polite face across the fence, then suddenly part of every dinner, every family event, every Saturday chore routine. Chelsea was young, beautiful, smart, with a laugh that made people lean in and trust her, and for a while I did too. She claimed she had grown up in a rough home, wanted stability, loved our family's warmth, said she felt safe around us. But soon things shifted, small things first. Like how she'd always show up just as I was heading out, or how she began correcting Caleb on things our mother used to gently guide him through. I dismissed it, thought she was just trying too hard to fit in. Then she started working at Dad's school as an administrative assistant, and everything escalated fast. She began planting doubts about Caleb's friends, accusing them of stealing or being a bad influence. She'd tell Dad that Caleb was lying about homework or skipping practice, but I knew it wasn't true because I was helping him with assignments at night. She convinced Dad to ground him, limit his phone access, and even move him to a different class. And Caleb changed. He became withdrawn, less talkative, eyes always darting toward her before answering any questions. I confronted Dad, but he shut me down, said Chelsea only wanted what was best for us, said I was being jealous or too emotional. Then she turned her attention to me. She'd praise me in public, say how mature I was, how responsible. Then in private she'd belittle me, undermine every decision, twist my words when I wasn't around. She'd lie to Dad about things I never said, and he believed her more than me. Eventually I moved out, tried to create some space, finish college, start my own life, but I kept in touch with Caleb. I knew something was off, but I couldn't prove it, not yet. Then came the breaking point. Caleb called me late one night, whispering through tears, said he overheard Chelsea talking to someone on the phone about how she could finally get rid of the last reminder of that woman, our mom. I drove home that night, didn't tell anyone. I just showed up and found Caleb hiding in the attic with a box of our mother's things. Chelsea had tried to throw them out, said they were old junk, said Dad had given her permission, but he didn't even remember agreeing to it. His memory was slipping, not because of age but because Chelsea had been mixing supplements into his drinks under the guise of health powders. I took Caleb and we left that night. No plan, no money, just fear and the need to breathe. I reported everything to the authorities, but without physical evidence it became our word against hers. And she was smart. She had covered her tracks, built a reputation as a caring school administrator and loving partner. We stayed with an old family friend, Mrs. Green, who believed us without question. She let us stay in her basement while I gathered every bit of proof I could, text messages, bank statements, footage from a neighbor's camera showing Chelsea sneaking into our garage late at night with donation boxes that contained family heirlooms. Caleb found an old USB with emails between Chelsea and a man I didn't recognize. They talked about securing the estate and neutralizing the brothers. I built a timeline, matched it with hospital visits, Dad's declining health and changes in his behavior. It all aligned, but still not enough for legal action that would stick, not yet. So I did what I never thought I'd do. I went back to the house, posed as if I wanted to reconcile, said I missed home. Chelsea let me in, pretended to be relieved, offered tea and that same old smile, but I recorded everything. I left my phone charging in the kitchen, camera facing the dining room where she made a call. I caught her admitting she'd switched medications and how they were almost gone, meaning us. I took that recording to a lawyer. Then the police. Things moved fast. Restraining orders were filed. Chelsea was removed from her position at the school. An investigation opened into her finances and manipulation of my father, and for the first time in years Caleb and I breathed again. Dad didn't say much at first. He was confused, hurt, angry, but when we showed him the evidence he cried, not out of betrayal but because deep down he knew he had lost years to her lies. We moved him into assisted care where he began to heal and slowly rebuild. The father we remembered started to return, and Chelsea, she disappeared, fled town before the court hearings. We later found out she had been married before under a different name and had done similar things to another family, but this time she didn't get away forever. They found her months later living under an alias in another state, facing charges and finally held accountable. The trial didn't happen overnight. It took months of preparation, countless depositions, endless paperwork, and long nights where I stared at the ceiling wondering if this nightmare would ever end. Caleb struggled with school during that time. Too many questions from classmates, too many whispers and sideways glances. He was the boy whose stepmom tried to erase his life. I tried homeschooling, but I was juggling 2 part-time jobs and our father's care, and legal meetings and therapy sessions, and it all blurred into a cycle of survival. Mrs. Green helped where she could, but I knew we couldn't lean on her forever, so I reached out to organizations that supported survivors of psychological abuse and family manipulation, and to my surprise, people listened. They believed us. They offered lawyers, advocates, therapists, people who understood how hard it was to prove emotional abuse, especially when the abuser wore a perfect mask. I started documenting every single thing, printing email threads, logging conversations, keeping screenshots, everything. And when the first court hearing came around, we had a binder 3 inches thick with organized timestamps, voice transcriptions, character witnesses, and financial audits. Chelsea showed up looking polished, calm, collected, like nothing had happened. Her lawyer painted us as vindictive children, said I had always resented her and that Caleb was being brainwashed by a bitter older sibling. But the judge read the documents, listened to the recordings, and slowly the image began to crack. She couldn't hold the act forever. When the school principal testified about how Chelsea used her access to manipulate student records and how 2 teachers had quietly resigned after feeling unsafe, the courtroom fell silent. And when Dad finally spoke, his voice shaking, he admitted how foggy his mind had been for years, how he trusted Chelsea because she took care of everything, how he now realized she isolated him from his family. The judge asked him one question directly: do you believe she intentionally misled you? And without hesitation, Dad said yes. That was the turning point. Chelsea's face dropped for the first time. The confident expression was gone, replaced by something hollow, fear, maybe guilt, maybe just the realization that she wasn't in control anymore. The ruling came a month later. Chelsea was found guilty of financial manipulation, medical interference, and identity fraud. The criminal charges stuck enough for a sentence, but what mattered most to us was the restraining order and the restitution. We were awarded full control of Dad's estate, his medical care, and a public apology was issued by the school for allowing her access to so many vulnerable students. But healing wasn't instant. Even after she was gone, her shadow lingered in every corner of our home, in the missing photo frames, and the drawers that still smelled like her perfume, and the broken trust between father and sons. We started family therapy. Dad struggled the most. Admitting he had failed to protect us was harder than anything he had ever done. Caleb had nightmares, flinched at loud noises, sometimes sat for hours just staring at nothing. I tried to be strong for both of them, but I had my own moments. 2 days when I questioned everything, when I wondered if I had gone too far or not far enough, when the silence in our house felt heavier than her lies. We redecorated slowly, room by room, replacing the sterile coldness with warmth, new curtains, brighter colors, plants everywhere. Caleb started drawing again, sketching comics and characters and stories where the villain always lost and the hero always saved the day. And one day I found a sketch of our family, Mom, Dad, Caleb, and me, with a little caption under it says, "We made it." And I cried for a long time, not because of sadness but because that hope was real. We had made it through something awful and came out still holding on to each other. I started writing too, not just documents but real writing, stories, poems, even a blog about family recovery and psychological abuse. And to my surprise, people read it. They reached out, shared their own stories, said they felt seen, said they were inspired to speak up for themselves. And it made me realize that Chelsea didn't just take something from us, she also gave us something, a purpose, a voice, a new kind of strength we didn't ask for but now we owned fully and fiercely. I knew he had finally let go. Dad framed the cover and hung it in our hallway, right where Chelsea's old plaques used to hang. One evening while we were eating dinner, I asked them both if they would ever want to move, start fresh in a new place, away from all the memories. And Caleb shook his head and said, "Why would we run when we already won?" And Dad smiled in a way I hadn't seen in years, like the weight had finally been lifted from his chest. We toasted sparkling cider and made a list of things we wanted to do together: go on a road trip to see the ocean, build a treehouse in the backyard, learn to cook Mom's favorite recipes from scratch. And it felt like the first real breath of air in a long time. We cleaned out the garage and found boxes of our childhood toys and photos, some water damaged, others perfectly preserved, like time had been waiting for us to reclaim them. I found an old VHS tape of a family vacation from when Mom was still with us, and we watched it that night, huddled under blankets in the living room, as if we were trying to bring her closer just by remembering she looked happy and so young. Her laugh filled the room and even Caleb teared up, but this time it wasn't from grief, it was from something gentler, maybe gratitude, maybe healing. One morning I woke up to the smell of pancakes and Caleb humming in the kitchen, and it felt like home again. We planted a garden out back and named each section after something meaningful. Caleb's had the sunflowers, Dad's had tomatoes, Mine had lavender and herbs, and every Saturday we'd water them together and talk about nothing and everything. One afternoon I saw Caleb reading to a group of kids at the community center where Chelsea used to volunteer, and he looked calm, present, like he'd finally made peace with his past. He started mentoring a younger boy whose sister had passed away, and I watched as he passed on the same strength he had spent so long building in himself. One night I asked him if he ever thought about Chelsea. And he said every day, but now it doesn't hurt like it used to. Now it reminds me who I want to be, and that hit me hard because I realized healing wasn't about forgetting, it was about choosing to remember differently. Dad started woodworking again, something he hadn't done since Mom died, and the first thing he made was a bench for the garden with our names carved into it. We sat on it every evening as the sun went down, and sometimes we talked. And sometimes we didn't need to talk because the silence wasn't heavy anymore, it was peaceful. Sometimes I'd still hear Chelsea's voice in my dreams, sometimes I'd wake up expecting her at the table, but those moments didn't break me like they used to. They reminded me that love doesn't disappear, it changes form, it lingers in the way we carry forward the good even when things fall apart. Caleb eventually published his second book, and this one was lighter, more hopeful, and at the book launch he thanked Dad and me and said we reminded him what family meant, and that no matter how dark it got there was always someone willing to light a match and guide you back. Dad held back tears and for once didn't try to hide them. Afterward we went out for ice cream like we used to when we were kids, and it felt like a circle had finally closed, not perfectly but honestly, and that was enough. Later that year we organized a memorial fundraiser in Chelsea's name and used the money to start a scholarship for students who had lost a sibling. Caleb gave a speech, and it was the first time I saw people cry, not out of pain but because they saw what resilience looked like, and they saw how grief can grow into grace. As we walked back home under the stars, Caleb looked at me and said, "You know, I don't think healing is a destination, I think it's a decision we make every day." And I nodded because I finally understood what he meant. We had all made that decision to live, to love, to remember without letting the past chain us down. And as we stood in the garden with the wind rustling the sunflowers, I whispered, "Thank you, Chelsea, not for the pain but for the strength you helped us find on the other side, and for the family you left behind, strong enough to start again together."
My personal reflection: even in the darkest moments we sometimes discover the brightest truths. This story wasn't just about pain or loss, it was about the quiet strength that comes when you choose not to give up on each other. Grief changes us, but it doesn't have to break us, and sometimes healing looks like pancakes in the morning, garden benches with your name on it, and silent forgiveness shared in the backyard. Now I want to ask you the same thing we asked ourselves when everything felt lost. Would you be able to forgive someone who shattered your world if it meant finding peace again? Would you choose justice or healing?